The following story occurred in the United States very recently, after closing institutes and offices across the country due to the coronavirus. It seemed like they were returning to normal again, but the worst was yet to come. A new pandemic that was not only outside, but had settled inside homes without anyone knowing what it was capable of. With the arrival of new technologies, an immersive video game console had been launched, which allowed the user to put on virtual reality glasses to see the games in the real world. When the player put on the glasses, he could see perfectly the place he was in, including the people around him, adding the elements of the selected game to his view. The maps adapted to the space around them, ensuring that each of the buyers had a unique experience. And this was what excited them the most, although they were not aware of the risk this entailed. John and Anna were two well-known siblings in the neighborhood where they lived. They spent their days playing in the street with the other children. He was the oldest by a couple of years and always acted protective of his little sister. They were at the end of their Christmas vacation, and that meant that they would soon have to go back to school. But that didn't matter to them, because their favorite day was approaching, that of the Three Wise Men. Furthermore, the two had been asking for the new video game console that they had seen so much everywhere for a long time. Not only in the advertising that appeared on television at lunchtime, they also saw that their favorite YouTubers were raving about this new invention. When they woke up on January 6th, they ran downstairs to open gifts. They had both behaved very well and had gotten good grades, so they were very sure that they were going to receive what they wanted so much. They began to unwrap the gifts. There were many under the Christmas tree. They had clothes, pajamas, perfumes, and even sports equipment like a soccer ball and tennis rackets. But John and Anna only wanted the game console. So they began to cry, wondering why the Three Wise Men hadn't brought them what they wanted so much. It seemed that the other gifts didn't have importance to them. Then their parents called them from the kitchen. There they were, both with happy faces, while there was another gift on the table. Then the children wiped away their tears and ran to unwrap it. Their expression changed completely as soon as they saw that they were the new virtual reality glasses and gloves that acted as controls. They had a radiant red color because it was a special edition of a video game called Knuckles' Revenge. John wanted to be the first to use the glasses because he was the older of the two, but Anna began to cry and the parents decided that it was best for the chance to decide. So they wrote down a number on a piece of paper and it was John who got it right. As soon as he put on the virtual reality glasses, he noticed that they adapted perfectly to his face and that they were so light that he barely noticed them. The gloves also took the shape of his hand. He could see what was around him perfectly and he felt very comfortable. He pressed a button on the side and then a welcome menu appeared. After a couple of updates and a brief tutorial on how to operate the glasses, it asked him to stare at the game cartridge. Suddenly, he saw the title of the game in front of him and pointed to the option to start the game. Looking at his hands, he realized that he looked like the character Knuckles. His forearms were red and fairy, and his gloves were white with the spikes. He looked around and was surrounded by enemies. They were robots that pointed laser weapons at him, which he had to dodge and hit to knock them down. His goal was to kill as many as possible before time ran out. He went around his house looking for enemies, feeling like a superhero. Anna chased him, waiting for the game to end so she could play. Once the counter reached 0, he took off his glasses and gave them to his little sister. The hours passed very quickly, until it was time for dinner. Their parents told them to go to bed because they had to get up early the next day to go to class. So they left the glasses charging and each went to their room. After a while, when everyone was already asleep, John went down to get the console, thinking about playing one more game. But when he put on the glasses, he noticed that they were very tight, and he got so dizzy that he had to take them off. He left the glasses where they were and went back to bed. The next morning, he tried to stay home to play, saying he had a fever. His parents knew his intentions, so they forced him to go to school. The wait seemed eternal, but finally the bell rang indicating that he could hit robots again. When he got home, he grabbed his glasses, still without having eaten. He started the game and continued playing for hours, until his parents, angry, warned him to share the console with his sister or they would hide it until the end of the school year. He let the girl play, even though he was very angry. He locked himself in his room and began punching the air, imagining that those robots from the video game were attacking him. After a while, he got tired and decided to turn on the computer to pass the time until dinner time. When he went to bed, he couldn't fall asleep. He spent a long time tossing and turning in bed, and decided to quickly go downstairs, grab the glasses, and take them to his room. There, he tried them on again, and it felt very strange. This time, when he entered the game, he found that he was in a room full of mirrors and not in his bedroom. His reflection was the character of Knuckles, who was approaching him, although John didn't move. Then the red character came out of the mirror, placing one of his fists on the young man's head and staring at him. John was paralyzed while he felt a chill run through his body. He tried to take off his glasses but couldn't. They had stuck to him. Then a new level began in which everything around him turned red, although this time there were no enemies. He noticed that on the wall there was graffiti that seemed to be made with blood that said, "You are trapped." He approached to touch it and noticed how his hand was stained with a liquid that was very cold. Frightened, he tried to leave the room to look for help, but the door wouldn't open. No matter how hard he tried to scream, the words wouldn't come out of his mouth and he became dizzy until he lost consciousness. He woke up in his bed while his father called him to come down for breakfast and get ready to go to school. There was no sign of the game console, so he went down in the living room and found the glasses there, still plugged in and with a full battery. This time, John really felt bad. His mother placed a thermometer on him. 5 minutes later, she took it off to discover that her son's body temperature was very high. They rushed him to the hospital and gave him an injection to make him better. They recommended that he rest for a few days, during which he had decided that he was going to entertain himself with a computer. That same day, his sister returned from school with a new video game. It was Pokemon, to play in first person. He saw her having more fun than with the previous game. However, John was still scared. After a week, when he had fully recovered, he was left alone at home. Since he was very bored, he decided to try that game that they had bought for his sister. As he placed the glasses on his head, he felt his heart race. He looked at the Pokemon cartridge and started the title screen. He breathed a sigh of relief and prepared to go through the tutorial. But when starting the game was paused. He desperately tried to touch every button that appeared in front of him, only to have the menu dissolve as a loading symbol appeared before his eyes. Moments later, he was petrified when he felt a presence behind him. Turning around, he found Knuckles staring at him with a smile. The character began to slowly approach John. The young man, scared, ran to his room and closed the door. When he turned around, he saw everything red again, but this time the graffiti on the wall had changed. It was clearly visible that it said, "You are trapped." Someone started banging on the door and moving the handle trying to open it. Suddenly the door opened and John's mother entered. He ran to her to hug her as he cried. When he opened his eyes, he realized that he was still alone at home. At that moment, he heard a noise behind him. He turned around and saw that one of the robots was pointing straight at him, while the timer had started counting down. He decided to continue playing. He thought it had all been a mistake, or even part of the game itself, and his imagination had done the rest. This time, the clock showed 10 minutes, so he went around his house, crushing his enemies. But when there was only 1 second left in the game, time stopped. He walked through the rooms looking for some hidden rival, and even went out to the patio until he gave up. He was tired and dizzy, so he tried to pause the game. Although the menu appeared, this time it was different. The letters were the same as the ones painted in his room, and the only option that worked was to continue. Fed up with the situation, he wanted to take off his glasses, but he couldn't. He He tried to loosen them and pull harder and harder, but he could feel how his skin was stuck to the device and it hurt him a lot. He grabbed his cell phone to call his family, but it didn't work with those gloves, which also looked like they were sewn to his hand. Then he heard the sound of keys turning in a lock. He ran towards the entrance, thinking that his parents had returned and were going to be able to help him. However, he was surprised to find that there was no one there, and the door remained closed. Turning around, he came face to face with Knuckles, who punched John in the stomach, leaving him kneeling on the ground. Then he grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. With his other hand, he ripped the glasses off his face and smashed them on the floor. The boy kicked while he was out of breath until he lost consciousness. John woke up in the hospital with the marks of his glasses around his eyes. His family was there, who explained to him that according to the doctors, the video game console had pressed so much on his face that it had cut off his circulation and he had fainted. But John knew that wasn't true, because when he looked at his belly, he found 2 marks that fit perfectly with Knuckles' fists. He was scared, and he knew his parents wouldn't believe him. They would think he was hallucinating. He returned home a few days later. He saw that his sister was playing with those glasses and that she didn't have any scratches. So confused, he went up to his room and decided to turn on the computer to play and forget what had happened. When he pressed the power button, he realized that it didn't work. He checked to make sure all the cables were connected and even opened the box to see that the pieces were still in place. He was definitely left without a computer. As the days went by, he decided to tell his parents what happened. As expected, they didn't believe him and told him that it was most likely that the fever he had had days before had caused those visions. Since the computer was broken, he looked for new entertainment, so he decided to start reading books in his free time. For him, there was no option to use the glasses again. And to his surprise, he had found a new passion. The world of literature had immersed him in adventures he had never imagined. However, his fear didn't go away, and he slept with the light on, although it didn't help him at all. Because he usually had nightmares in which Knuckles appeared in front of him and stared at him, getting closer little by little until he woke up sweating. Months passed, and he watched as his sister continued to buy more and more games for the console and had fun. He felt like a coward and he was ready to play again. Before doing so, he decided to make Knuckles' game disappear, so that no one could start a new game. After a long time thinking, he made a decision to bury it in the yard. So he went into the garage, grabbed a shovel, and started digging. It was very hot that day, but John wasn't going to let that stop him. When he saw that the hole was deep enough, he threw the video game box with the cartridge inside and poured dirt on top. He returned home, motivated and determined to have fun. Before scanning any games, he went into the console options and selected the button to delete all of Knuckles' game's information. After a couple of seconds, a message appeared saying, "Operation completed successfully." Then he went back to the main menu, stared at one of the new games his sister had brought, and started playing. Hours passed while John had fun and beat the levels without any difficulty, with such speed that he managed to complete the game. He hadn't played for so long that he knew that that day no one would tell him to stop until dinner was ready. So he decided to scan another one and continue playing. He was so immersed in the experience that it seemed like nothing else existed, until his father yelled at him that dinner was ready, tired of repeating it several times without getting a response. John asked for 5 more minutes. He was about to finish a level. When he finished it, he tried to take off his glasses and realized he couldn't. He pulled harder and harder, but it felt like he was trying to peel off his own skin. Overwhelmed, he went to the kitchen to ask his father to help him. He also grabbed his glasses and tried to take them off, while his son screamed in pain. He loosened the straps around John's head, but it was of no use. It was as if the glasses were part of his face. Then the young man felt that someone was looking at him, and when he turned around, he was paralyzed. He saw how Knuckles was watching him with an angry face, holding the cover of the video game with traces of dirt in one of his hands. John had panicked and was shouting for his father to quickly take off his glasses, while the red hedgehog approached him. But the console began to get hotter and hotter, while the little boy cried in pain. His father called an ambulance and the fire department, as he couldn't even touch the device without getting burned. When Knuckles got close enough to John, he pulled one of his arms back and punched him in the face. At that moment, the glasses exploded, and with them, John's head, staining the entire kitchen with blood. They say the sound of the explosion alerted neighbors. Some saw the little boy's body through the window, headless and lying on the ground. When they told the authorities what happened, they withdrew the product and banned it from markets in all countries around the world. But what they didn't know is that the problem hadn't been the virtual reality glasses, nor the gloves, but the cursed Knuckles game. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!